So we'll have about 3 to 4 participants per room. Let's unshare muna, Janine, and are we all ready for the breakout?
Hindi na. Ka-join ako din ng
This workshop is brought to you by the Ateneo de Manila University's Department of Sociology and Anthropology through the Anthropological and Sociological initiatives of the Ateneo DSA-ASIA, the University of Nottingham, New Vic Borderlines at the New Vic Theatre, and Macman, and the Association of Psychologists and Helping Practitioners Incorporated, and the Ateneo de Davao University, with funding from Global Challenges Research Fund of the UK Research. Our workshop convener is Dr. Serena Saloma Akpedonu. She is a professor at the Department of Sociology and Anthropology of the Ateneo de Manila University. Her work examines knowledge mobilization in relation to social development, the built environment, sustainable consumption and production, and promotes the problem-solving mode in social science engagements. She was named Outstanding Young Scientist by the Philippine National Academy of Science and Technology in 2007. She is the Dean of the School of Social Sciences of the Loyola Schools of the Ateneo de Manila University and the immediate past president of the Women's and Gender Studies Association of the Philippines.
Thank you for joining us today for the Moral Capability Assessment Toolkit, a workshop on gender inequality and context fragility. I would like to acknowledge the presence of representatives from our collaborating institutions and esteemed guest speakers. The Moral Capability Assessment Toolkit, or MCAT, is one of the knowledge products of the research project entitled I Am My Dignity, which brought together various institutions across disciplines from the United Kingdom and the Philippines. The research project was conducted over a period of 6 months with research participants from Marawi, Talaingod, and Zamboanga in Mindanao. Among other things, this workshop is designed as a data validation activity. We will be sharing the findings and insights from the research project, as well as get feedback on its usefulness and how potential users can and may want to use it. It is also an occasion in this rainy afternoon in the Philippines or in Metro Manila to gather gender and development experts, practitioners, and advocates to inspire and be inspired by each other's work. So this is what we have in store for you today. In the first part of the workshop, Apprehending Gender Inequality and Context Fragility in Mindanao, we will have the members of the research team. All right, I hope I have been unmuted. In the second part, Appreciating the MCAT, we have invited a gender specialist who is working with the national government and several international development agencies to provide an indicative mapping of available GAD tools in the Philippines. And GAD advocates and organizers use at the community level and organizational level. We have also invited 2 gender and development practitioners and advocates to reflect about their work and assess the toolkit in relation to this work. This will be followed by a discussion, hopefully a lively one, with decision makers, gender and development experts and advocates regarding new ideas on how to make more meaningful our ways of engaging women in the various communities. So let us begin. Let me introduce the research team members who will be presenting the toolkit and its findings. Dr. Lara Bianchi. Lara is a political scientist with expertise in human rights and responsible business conduct. Currently, she is an assistant professor in business and society at the International Center for Corporate Social Responsibility and a rights lab expert at the University of Nottingham, working on vulnerable groups and extreme forms of exploitation. In 2018, Lara worked with the UN Office of the High Commissioner, drafting the initial report of the OHCHR Accountability and Remedy Project Phase 3, entitled Non-State-Based, Non-Judicial Grievance Mechanisms and Exploratory Analysis. Lara is the principal investigator of the MCAT project. Next speaker would be Dr. Joel Kanudai. Joel Kanudai is an anthropologist with an eye towards the study of visual systems, practices, and engagements of communities dealing with conditions of uncertainty. His research interests cover visual approaches to the grounded forms and practices of cosmopolitanism, armed conflicts, displacements, primary care, and interreligious relations. He trained at the University of Oxford Institute of Social and Cultural Anthropology, where he earned a DPhil in Social and Cultural Anthropology. Currently, Joel chairs the Department of Sociology and Anthropology of the Ateneo de Manila University. He continues to engage journalists and journalism through his affiliation with the Mindanao Institute of Journalism, the publisher of the popular Minda News website. Dr. Angeli Santos. Angeli is an associate professor in applied psychology at the Faculty of Medicine and Health Science of the University of Nottingham and the director for the Center of Organizational Health and Development. She is an applied psychologist with research expertise in vulnerable occupational groups, including those exposed to violence and precarious employment conditions. The final speaker in the first part is Mr. Rogelio Lelis Jr. Raj is an assistant professor at the Ateneo de Davao University's Department of Psychology. Currently, he is the director for external affairs of the department's community engagement arm, the Center for Psychological Extension and Research Services, and an active affiliate of the Association of Psychologists and Helping Practitioners, Incorporated. Highly trained for post-disaster mental health and psychosocial support, Raj delivers MPHS interventions and services to a diverse population in times of disasters, both human-initiated and natural disasters. So thank you to the MCAT team members for providing us with this time. Let's have your presentation. Yeah.
Shall I begin?
Yes, Lara.
Yes, okay. So hello, everybody. Thank you very much for being here today. It's a great honor. I'm in Nottingham at the moment. The sun is here and it's early morning just to just to give you an insight of where I am. And I wish I were there, of course. I wish I were there for the entirety of this project. But of course, that was not a possibility, and it has been frustrating not be able to travel, but at the same time I have to say that the team in the Philippines has been absolutely magnificent, and this is the last week of our project, and I can only thank them and be grateful for all the work that they've done. Bobby presented you the speakers for the session today, but our team was bigger. We had many more team members, and this was, I guess, a great project. And what I'm gonna do in the next few minutes is to spoil a bit the end, to tell you the final outcome, the final product that we managed to deliver in the last few months. Next slide, please. The point for us was to try and find a way for engaging more meaningfully women on the ground. And we really believe that women engagement is key for fostering their dignity, for fostering their empowerment. And this is why we thought it was important to work on engagement and what it means to engage with them. We started using three main theoretical frameworks that we also applied on the ground. The first category that we used was the who I am category, the identity category. As you know, women, of course, are one of the main victims of a fragile context. And who I am, it means that I am a woman, and I am a woman that is vulnerable because of social norms and because of where I live, which is the second category. So the context where I live, of course, influences very much the way I can enjoy my dignity and my empowerment. And then we use the third category, which is central to our project overall, which is what I'm told I need. And this is kind of crucial because of gender inequality and gender disempowerment, and because of the fragility of the context where I am. Very often I'm told what my needs are. And we just thought that this was not good enough. Next slide, please. And I really love this quote from one of our interviewees that said, "No matter what I say, people still will not hear me or listen to me. That's why I rather not say anything at all." And I think this is crucial and represents very well the condition of many women on the ground. They think, they believe, because of gender norms and cultural norms, that their voice are not worth it. They are not worth to be listened to. And so they become voiceless, and women's agency is very much impacted by this feeling of not being aware of the importance of their voice. And next, please. And we think that there are limits to traditional engagement practices. And what happens is very much that organizations working with women, for women, what they do is they usually employ traditional engagement practices in contexts that are peculiar, at least, like conflict-affected societies. And usually what they tend to do is to decide a policy or an action for women at their desk, and then they go on the ground and they share with the women information about what they already decided. Next, please. And we think this is very limiting in the sense that engagement is just a tick box exercise for many organizations. And I've been working with multinational organizations for a long time now. And I can tell you that they would claim to have been very successful in running a focus group, for example, with women, without really considering the outcomes from the engagement, or without really considering whether women were willing to say something and to be engaged, or they probably were just there nodding their heads and not saying anything because they thought their voices weren't really worth it. Next, please. And sorry, I was just looking. I think we skipped a slide. So no, that's fine. Don't worry, it's fine. But what I wanted to say is that our MCAT, of course, aims at engaging more meaningfully women, and so the point is to make a difference for women. But as a matter of fact, our users, our MCAT users, are organizations working on the ground, and the toolkit is aimed at facilitating for organizations the way they interact with women. And by organizations, we mean public local authorities, for example, but also businesses or NGOs operating on the ground. What we propose with our toolkit is something that we like to think is a heightened participatory approach that is based on dialogism. So it is based on the annulment of hierarchies between participants. So for a very short term, during the workshop, during the engagement process, the engaged, so the women, and the engager, so the organization, are at the very same level. And what I stress to my team on the ground very often, and I think is central, it's central to our approach, is that the engager, the organization, must be the main learner. So what happens is that you go on the ground, you run an engagement process, and you're not going there to tell women anything about how they should feel or what they need. The point is very much to trying to listen to them and to learn from them what are their needs, what are their wishes for the future, if any. And we think that an engagement which is based on dialogism can very much become emancipatory and empowering for women, and can transform the condition of women during engagement processes from objects to subjects. So from people that are just told the policies and actions that have been chosen for them, to people that actually can participate and co-produce desirable outcomes like actions and policies with them. Next, please. And we do that using an approach that is an art-based methodology called cultural animation. And I'm not gonna tell you much about this because Raj will tell what happened during the workshop that we ran in Mindanao a month ago now. So he will explain better what we did through cultural animation. But the point of cultural animation is that the interaction is made possible through playfulness and through games that make at ease people participation to a project, and they build trusting relationships between the participant, being them engagers or engaged, and they very much the games allow participants to have multiple ways of knowing and co-producing what are considered desirable outcome. Next, please. So very quickly, I'm gonna present you the toolkit. And no, wait, please go back. Thank you. the toolkit and the final product of our project, basically. So we ended up having three main steps that are related to the MCAT, and that we really would like organizations adopting the MCAT to keep in consideration. And for each of the steps we we offer actually some devices that can make those steps easier to achieve. Next, please. The first key step is knowing the context. And we think this is really crucial, especially working in fragile contexts. So as an organization, you can't just take traditional mainstream engagement approach that work very well, for example, in London, and pretend to apply the same engagement approaches in a conflict-affected society. So knowing the context is central. You need to adapt to the context and being context sensitive. And the devices that we provide for doing that are two. The first one are the narrative interviews, so listening to what women and institutions operating on the ground have to tell you about current conditions and current situation around gender inequality. And Joel, in the next presentation, will tell you more about what we found out in Mindanao about that. And then the second device is on the checklist, which is a questionnaire that Anjali, in one of the presentations, again, will present you this afternoon in your case. And the checklist is a questionnaire that try to evaluate the condition of women and their relationship with conflict and vulnerability and their sense of violence. Next, please. The second step that we really want engagers to have is the importance of learning how to engage. It's a learning process on how to more meaningfully engage. So it's almost like a process of this learning what you know about engagement and trying to challenge yourself in adopting alternative methods. And for this, we offer two devices. One is the digital training course that helps you to understand the principles around meaningful engagement and digital and cultural animation. And then we offer an app that can be used also offline, which is kind of crucial, of course, for conflict-affected societies and remote zones. And the app helps the engagers to run basically more smoothly the workshop. Next one. And the last step is the co-creation of desirable futures. This should be the main point, of course, of the entire structure of the MCAT tool. And engaging more meaningfully women should happen in the design, during the design process of policies and action, and then during the implementation of these policies and action that can happen, keeping in consideration all the three steps that we propose. And I think this is it on my side. And next, please. And I think the next speaker is Joel.
Sorry, I think I'm still. Can I be heard?
We can hear you.
So well, we can hear you.
Thank you, Lara. Thank you for that, and welcome everyone to rainy Manila, floody Manila, and cloudy Manila. But it's your presence here sort of also warm and dry us up. And thank you to be around. Thank you to be here, and for coming to listen to our presentation. I will begin. I think Clara had explained the frameworks of our engagement, but I'm presenting this just to ask you to bear in mind our analytical lens in going through the data set that we have collected from the research associated with the MCAT project. I will essentially talk about what Lara was noting as knowing the context, the step one of the MCAT process or the tool that we're doing. Next slide, please, Trish. So the context of what we are engaging on is essentially in Mindanao. The study areas that we thought where we can meaningfully engage and better understand the context that we are expressing or talking about is these three areas that are all affected by armed confrontations continuously from the past and up to today. I'll explain a little bit more of that. But the coverage of the study are areas in Marawi, covering primarily Maranao women, the internally displaced persons in the area, and an insurgency affected community in Talaingod, the Bodol Norte, comprising mainly of Atamanobo women, and then finally the areas in Zamboanga City that was affected by at 2013 armed conflagration, and the participants there covered mainly Tausug and Sama Bajau women. The methods that we've used are mixed. That would include cultural animation, which will be explained later, and key interviews which you have done online and also face to face whenever possible, and then there's survey as well. We will be discussing, or my colleagues, Rog and Anjali will be discussing the results of the cultural animation and survey, and I will be discussing mainly our understanding of the data set that was generated from the key interviews. Next slide, Trish, please. Okay, so what we are dealing with as an area, Mindanao, is 50 years of armed conflict, or 50 years of living in the state of fragility. Now, the nature of the conflict is on and off. When I say on and off, the conflict happened, or the conflict event occur from between 1 to 5 years and sometimes 10 years, but they do repeat themselves. It's not a continuing conflict wherein you'd see gunfire every day, but it's a conflict wherein you would have a huge burst of armed conflagration resulting to the displacement of a massive number of people, and then going back to not really a stable condition, but a condition wherein people are living in the knowledge that they are in a situation of instability and therefore in fragility. The areas that are affected mainly by conflicts in Mindanao are areas where there are secessionist armed uprising and also counter-terrorism violence, particularly in the Bangsamoro region. And in some other areas are places where there are communist insurgency, primarily in places that are being considered as the ancestral domains of indigenous peoples. There were significant advances in the peace process, particularly in the secessionist feature or arena of conflict. And the key approach has been political, economic development, and security normalization, or at least this idea that there wasn't a conflict before 50 years ago and they would want to return in that stable situation. But then the question to be asked probably is that what was actually the normal? What is a situation where we can see the everyday life is being lived in a particular way? Does that respond to women's rights and women's protection for that matter, or rights protection for that matter? Next slide, please. I'll just go one at a time into the essential key unique features of each of the areas that we have engaged with. So the first area, the Atamanobo women communities in Talaingod, is a communist insurgency zone or counterinsurgency zone. There had been occasions of repeated displacement of civilians, particularly of indigenous peoples, way back in the 1970s during the martial law years, but it carried on up to today. Now, the conflict is not just between the military and the rebels, or the military supported by the state against the Atamanobo women, or the rebels against the Atamanobo community, but it's a situation where you can see a sharp divide among peoples in the communities, among the Atamanobo indigenous community. So some are aligned with the communist rebels, and others are aligned with the government or the military, or if they're not aligned, at least they're living in that, within that context where you can see sharp divisions among peoples in a village, in a town. Next slide, Trish. So the other area, Marawi, I think for those who are in the Philippines are very much familiar of what happened in 2017 when reportedly a group of armed men professing loyalty or alignment to the Islamic State in the Middle East swoop into Marawi and occupied some of the areas. The soldiers, the Philippine state reacted also in a high-handed way and engaged in armed confrontations. Now, the conflict has an international dimensions, primarily because of reports that Islamic State members had also recruits coming from across different areas in some parts of supposedly the Islamic world, or those who are professing to be loyal to or believe on the aims of the Islamic State. But on the other hand, the Philippine government had also been taking consultancy advisement, as well as technological support coming from international military institutions from different states, from the United States to China and other alliances, international alliances against terrorism, so-called. And the women in this area are not just had seen or had experienced violence, not just in 2017, but had also been experiencing violence in other parts of the region, particularly in Lanao del Sur, where Marawi is located, the province, and had went through the experiences of being caught in armed conflicts and were displaced themselves in previous wars, or some of them had families who had been caught in brutal, deadly armed confrontation or feuds between families that they locally call Rido, or this is the clan feuds that are quite violent, that sometimes it interplay with bigger and conflicts. I'll move on. Finally, Zamboanga, the next slide, please, is an area that was affected by the 2013 conflict. So that's the context of the site. But let me just breeze through the findings that we have. Next slide, Trish. The key findings that we can say is that the campaign to advance women empowerment seemed to be gaining ground, but there appears to be an emerging, or if not, a manifestation of a condition wherein gender inequality appears to be becoming part of the norms of everyday life, of everyday engagement. And we can see this in three observation areas, in the arena of women engagement and social norms, in the area of women empowerment and resilience, and in the area of peace, human rights, and normalization. Let me go deeper into that. Next slide, Trish. So traditions and religious interpretations seem to define gender roles and practices and also social expectations. And some of the interpretations of the traditions and religious teachings appear to be more or becoming to be barriers in the advancement of women rights. They had also created some sort of stereotypes of women's roles that in turn implicate meaningful engagement of women. Let's move on, Trish, in the next slide. And this is despite greater awareness of role expectations of women. So the next slide, everyday life of women, we are seeing probably it's a continuing practice or new practices or practices that have actually been there, but sometimes being reinforced by conflict. Practices such as child marriages, forced marriages, polygamy in some areas, some practices of genital mutilation. Others were saying it's just symbolic. There's no really cutting of the genital, but just just a symbolic act that is being done, but no blood. And then there are also some cases of abducting women as a pathway to marriage. And there are pervasive references of women as having no education or no grade or not having been to any grades in elementary education. Next slide, please. So that becomes part of everyday life, and you can see we can see that in the key interviews that we have generated. As you can see in the course here, I don't have time to discuss all of them, but I'll just cite a few. Others are taught that it's a religious teaching that women cannot lead any group if there are qualified men, and that there are particular role for daughters and mothers, and there are expectations where they had to follow. Next slide, Trish. So the one of the key informants had pointed out their culture, their traditions are the ones that are affecting them to become or to have more capability of becoming a good leader. So there's a normalization of an internalization of this thinking of this thought that women only occupy a particular role. Next slide, Trish. We can probably go on to the next area. So we also look at the project of women empowerment and resilience. Sorry, I got unmuted. I'll be quick with this. As already said, there had been advancement on women's empowerment, and there had been recognition of women's resilience. But next slide. If we come to look at it, the empowerment, the flip side of empowerment and resilience is that women are being taught to be empowered, and since they're being taught to be empowered, they're being taught to be resilient. But at the same time, we get to ask the question whether the empowerment and resilience is really an organic experience, or is this an indicator that the normalization of violence, the normalization of inequality is actually embedded quite in the social relations, and so therefore women were just really forced to be resilient, to accept what's going on, and the danger that we see there is that it can be construed as resilient, but there are also other structural issues underlying it. Next slide, please. I know that I'm out of time, but let me just present the last point, Trish. Okay, peace and human rights. Now, all the problems, the concerns that I had noted earlier has been is what is observable on the ground, but currently the peace and human rights campaign direction seem to be focused on structural engagements, such as bringing in security, bringing in development, and addressing gender-based violence at the structural level. But the peace agreement seldom address the embeddedness, the normalization of what we see as the embeddedness of everyday violence and everyday inequality in women's relations that had been exacerbated by the armed conflict. Let's go to the last slide, please. And with this, we think that while there cannot there cannot be a normalization of peace, there cannot be a normalization of governance, or there cannot be a ground for continuing development without the discontinuity of the normalization of inequality and abuses that we see in the ground, that we can generate from, that we generated from the testimonies of the many women that we have interviewed to key interviews. And there's a risk of accepting these unjust relations, especially because there's no mechanism, even in the peace process, that address this problem. And there might, or there can be a danger of misreading domestic and community experience of gender inequality as normal, and therefore, because it's normal, then women are resilient because they can live within that normal engagement. And there seems to be a significant perception that that men and women are quite different, that there's a particular role for men and women, and that women are confined to a particular role and men are confined to another role. And this kind of gender cultural perspective seem to fail to explain the gender inequality before our needs that we are seeing in Mindanao. Thank you very much. Sorry for the overtime. I'll pass it on to Rog.
Oh, not yet. I think it's Angeli's turn.
Angeli,
It's
sorry.
Angeli's turn.
Angela, I pass it on to you for the surveys.
Hi, I'm Anjali. I'm assuming that you can hear me. So my portion of, or my contribution to this project was all to do with the questionnaire. So it was a community questionnaire that we distributed across the 3 areas that Joel highlighted earlier. And what I'm going to do today is share with you some of the very preliminary findings. We actually have data coming in still. So some of the, so my data analysis is not yet complete. So apologies for that. And, but I do want to kind of share with you some of the interesting findings we've uncovered so far. Next slide, please. So the questionnaire was comprised of 5 sections. So the first one looks at demographics, so you know who they are, what indigenous groups and their age, etc. And then we had 4 questions about community engagement, which I will talk about. And then we had quite a big section, 29 items on this idea of moral capability. So the notion of women's dignity, empowerment, resilience, and self-determination. So do they have the capacity to determine their own future? And then we had some interesting questions on various forms of domestic violence, which I will also share with you. And lastly, we had a measure of life satisfaction. Next slide, please. So who were our respondents? So far, we've had 116 respondents. And of those respondents, we about 15% were single, 63% were married, and 22% were either divorced or separated. And the age groups, we had 30% in the 18 to 27 bracket, 27% in the 28 to 37 bracket, and then 16% in the 38 to 47 bracket. And then we only 5% of respondents were age 58 and over. If we look at the ethnic groups, you'll see that we had more or less equal distribution of Bajau, Tausug, and other small indigenous groupings, and slightly more of the Atam Manobo. And we also had some the Bawon and also Samal. Next slide, please. So as I said, we included some questions on community engagement. And really the reason why we did this was because we wanted to find out to what extent these women had a voice in their communities, and to what extent they felt their voice was important. So about half of the women participated in kind of NGO or government organized events that were related to community engagement, community dialogue, community participation. And but if you look at the importance of their contribution, or their perceived importance of their contribution to such events, you'll see that this varied quite a bit. And you will see that actually 22% of women said that it was not at all important, meaning that I guess you could conclude that these women felt that they did not have a voice, and that their voice was really not important in such events. But if you kind of look at that in the flip side, you will see that, yeah, about 80% or 78% of women, felt that they had their voice was important to the development of the community, which is a positive thing. And for us as researchers, that's quite important, because if we want to build on the positive aspects of community engagement and women empowerment, then that's a good starting point. Next slide, please. And again, another question that is quite similar: to what extent did they think their participation benefited the community? About 20% or 21% again said that their participation did not benefit the community. But again, that kind of 80% indicator that their participation did benefit the community. So again, a kind of that is a positive takeaway, I think, in the sense that there's a lot that community engagers can build upon for the future. And then when we asked them to what extent they felt their community had been adequately consulted, that was slightly higher in terms of the people that felt that their community was not consulted at all. So that was at 25%. So suggesting that, only about 3/4 or 75% of individuals felt that there was some form of public consultation or government consultation with respect to various civic issues. So things like resettlement, healthcare provision, etc., housing. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next section of the questionnaire asked about the presence of domestic conflict and domestic violence. So when we asked them how they would describe their relationship with their husband and partner, a lot of women indicated that there was either some tension or a lot of tension with their husband or partner. And only about 10% of women indicated that there was no tension. And this, I think, alludes to the notion of horizontal conflict that is ongoing, and also the kind of tension and difficulties that women face in these communities. And when we asked them how they would describe their relationship with their family, the trend was somewhat similar in that only about 22% said that they had no tension with their family, and quite over 50% said they had some tension with their family. And so therefore suggesting that, you know, a lot of these women felt that, you know, they were in a position of conflict with their family members, and also which possibly had kind of knock-on effects on their, you know, perceived empowerment, as well as their perceived self-determination, or their ability to choose and control their own future. Next slide, please. And I guess this is probably the most disturbing of the findings, in the sense that when we look at experience of domestic violence, this is highly prevalent among these communities. So if you look at the first question, so has someone ever abused you? And I didn't want to ask the question simply by asking about abuse or physical abuse, because they might not know what that is. So we actually included examples. So being slapped, pushed, choked, burnt, hit with an object, etc. Only you know, just about 40% or 36% of the women said that they were either often abused or sometimes abused, which is quite alarming, really. And then again, when we asked about emotional abuse, again, over 40% of the women said that they were either sometimes emotionally abused or often emotionally abused. I mean, if you look at the extreme category, the often category, for both questions, you will see that this is quite small, 4% and 2%, which in a way is it's a good indicator that, you know, there are a small number of individuals that are kind of at one extreme of the continuum. But at the same time, if you look at the sometimes category, the percentages are quite large, 32% and 42% respectively. So, you know, that's quite alarming in one sense, because this suggests that such abuse occurs regularly. And it also suggests that perhaps there might be some sort of normalization of abuse within the household, both from the partners as well as other members of the family. Next slide, please. And so one of the questions that we asked them is whether they were satisfied with their life. And you will see that 22% said that they strongly disagree. So this is quite alarming, because and only 15% said they strongly agree that they were satisfied with their life. So a lot of these women are indeed in kind of more vulnerable positions, which suggest that, you know, they are unable to determine their own future, and that their sense of dignity and empowerment is somewhat compromised. And, you know, these are areas that community engagers and people and researchers and the like need to kind of work on in order to increase their sense of dignity and empowerment and moral capability. Next slide, please. So this is my final slide. So, I mean, as I said, I just wanted to give you kind of a snapshot of what we found, but there are actually quite a few next steps for this questionnaire. The first thing we would like to achieve is to develop a moral capability assessment checklist. And that refers back to this idea of knowing the context and knowing your participants, so that community engagers will be able to assess the vulnerability of their participants in terms of exposure to different forms of domestic violence, but also on the flip side, look at the positive aspects and assess their levels of dignity and empowerment and resilience. So in this questionnaire was comprised maybe over 70 questions. So obviously the final assessment checklist, which will be used by engagers, will be much smaller, you know, probably around 15 questions, so that they can easily assess, you know, individual levels of dignity, empowerment, or what we call moral capability, and also their vulnerability. So this is an additional tool to the overall toolkit that enables engagers to know the context better, but also know the women better. Thank you. I will now pass on to Raj.
Yes, thank you, Anjali. And good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Raj. I'm from the Association of Psychologists and Helping Practitioners, the primary community partner of MCAT. And I'm going to share with you the second key step of MCAT, which is learning how to engage and learning how to engage by using the devices supplied by the approach. So just a little bit of background. APHP is volunteer-based, nonprofit, and our affiliates come from different backgrounds. But what keeps this group together is the willingness to go out of their way, come together, volunteer, and respond to the mental health and psychosocial support needs of Mindanaoan communities. And recently, I really extended our services to the rest of the Philippines. So that requires a certain level of commitment. And this is precisely why MCAT's approach instantly resonated with us, the emphasis on forging meaningful engagement with the community. And so it was not really difficult for us to assemble a team of engagers. Next slide, Trish. So for this project, our main facilitator is Ms. Ima Concepcion Owani, who is here with us right now. She's a guidance counselor with an impressive facilitation portfolio under her belt. We also have Bernalyn Mansiwagan, the co-facilitator, a proud Atamanobo and basic education teacher. They are our cultural animators. We also needed someone who can liaise with the community, someone with an insider, an outsider at the same time, community perspective, and that would be Jeric Brian Lascuña. He's born and raised in Talaingod, Bisaya, but knows how to speak at Amanobo with an 8-year teaching experience in far-flung sitios in Talaingod. So you see, these are individuals with different backgrounds, but common among them is how they value diversity, how they truly seek Trish, you can just continue the slide. Genuine exchange, build trust, and these people naturally know how to acknowledge voices. And the operating term there is, well, it's not just really giving voices per se, rather it's acknowledging voices. That means that everyone has a voice, and we just need to set a platform where the human person can be listened to and from. They know These engagers know the value of being listened to, and more than that, they genuinely want to learn from these voices. So in that sense, not only are they culturally competent, they exude cultural humility. They are willing to suspend their own ideas and what they believe in order to learn from the community. Next, can just go, Trish. Next slide. So now we have a team of engagers, and we needed a platform where we can share and we can put the structure and how we're going to deliver what is needed for the project. The MCAT online course then becomes a very helpful platform for the team to fully understand the engagement approach of MCAT and reconcile these with the engagers' values and, of course, their skill. The MCAT course is very responsive, especially to our current training needs amidst the pandemic. It's fully online. Our friends from Macman did a really great job designing the website, and of course, Professor Mihaila and Sue, who are they come up with cultural animation, and of course with Lara in putting all of these in putting this together. So the platform is very easy to navigate, and it contains the basic principles, the tools that you can use. So you have a menu of games and suggested structure of cultural animation as a form of engagement. So Bernalyn, the co-facilitator I mentioned earlier, Trish, can you hit next? Says that the tool indeed in her individual learning session is very simple. So according to her, the simplicity of the tool has a power to extract ideas, emotions, and thoughts that a woman never knew she had. So perhaps she's just talking about herself then. Following the individual training, we made sure that the team had huddle sessions. It was our thing, making sure that we use the contents of the course to propel our workshop planning. So yes, we talk about the workshop design and all of these details, but we did not fixate on that. We always go back to the process of engagement. What is this about? What is the value and the basic principle of cultural animation? So a constant reminder for Ma'am Ima. She reflects rather than being told that the participants or you as a person, that your experience should be this, labeling it, or maybe you should do things like this for cultural animation. For her, no, your experience is wonderful, it's valid, and it's true. So this has been this was the process of the team leading to the time of actual cultural animation workshop. So from this time, in about a week, while we were huddling, we needed to come up with a design to fully deliver the cultural animation workshop in Talaingon, Davao del Norte. Next slide, Trish. So in designing the workshop, you have a lot of decisions to make, of course, and it really did help that we have some context first, but we needed to know more. The team brought their own expertise. So you have, go ahead, Trish. You have Braille, who painted us, a picture of who the participants are: age, education, religious background, living conditions, livelihood, what they eat, what they do on a Sunday afternoon, what is morning routine for them, how do they greet each other on the road when they pass each other's house, for example, among other things. Braille did a brilliant job telling us these stories and the context, aside from our own observations, of course. Bernalyn helped us understand even more, deeper, on the underlying cultural values and themes associated with the practices that was presented by Braille. And this really helped inform the workshop design, how the venue will look like, what are the materials that are appropriate, among other things that Ma'am Ima crafted with the help, of course, of Dr. Ilagan and Randolph Reserve and the rest of the APHP team who were in the huddle with us. And lastly, we simulate. Our facilitators, with the guidance of Dr. Gail, run the entire workshop on their own. Ma'am Ima and Bernalyn, immersed in meaningful engagement one-on-one. That in itself is already, I don't know, there's an added value already to that. Next slide, Trish. The MCAT tool, as mentioned earlier by Lara, also has an offline feature. It comes with an app that works great in both iOS and Android. I feel like I'm selling something. But some of the things that you can do with the app is that registration. Yes, paperless registration, something that a lot of the facilitators here, community facilitators, can really use. Embedded with the app is the pre-test and the post-test. So if you have a pre-test and post-test for your workshop, it's already there. And you can download it later on in an entire Excel file. You can have all the instructional videos on the online platform in your training downloaded as well as the facilitator's checklist to make sure that, of course, you do not forget anything before the workshop. We also utilize the app to administer the survey that was presented earlier by Angeli, and the data management really was very smooth. Now, we haven't exhausted yet the full capacity of the app, but definitely this is something that is useful for community workers in areas with intermittent to no internet connection. Next, Trish. The workshop, the proper workshop. The CA workshop is a combination of games, creative tasks, and group discussions. For games, we know that games are very relatable. Lahat tayo ay bata. It's fun, it's dynamic. We start with games that are more complicated, that are not complicated at all, and therefore it widens the degree of participation. Better if we use local games, so then everyone can participate. So this levels the playing field and positions the participant to claim that opportunity to be as expert as the rest of the group, to be of the same power as everyone else. So of course, you feel the struggle and the uneasiness in the beginning, but thank God for competent facilitators. Rapport is built and it's maintained, leading to breaking barriers among and between the participants. Next would be creative tasks. It allows groups of participants to see the bigger picture. So one, they get to imagine forces outside of themselves that can affect or has affected them and their community, be that positive or negative, giving them they see the bigger picture, but at the same time, secondly, it also allows them to renegotiate or reimagine their lives by manipulating the things that they think they can control. This is a group task, so it becomes a shared experience among the participants. And this, someone would say that this task meant for me, and what this task means for the other person. So the situation reimagining becomes a common goal. You understand how the other person is affected by a force, you engage with this person, and therefore it follows that you want to be part of that change that will impact the life of that person next to you in that workshop. So, and lastly, you have the process questions, the discussions. Participants are then given time to discuss as they respond to process questions. This encourages reflexivity. They are brought to a space where they can start to make sense of their thoughts and feelings by making sense of how they made sense of the games and the creative activities. So one game, varied meanings would soon emerge, an opportunity to appreciate the many truths in that session hall. So one game, one realizes I get bullied because I haven't had the chance to attend school, and the other would say I get bullied in inter-school events because I am from Talaingot, because I am a Lumad. Participants get to identify their similarities and how similar are their differences. So they realize that both statements talk about inclusion or lack thereof and of diminished opportunities. Next slide, Trish. I think this is my last slide. So After all the preparation and the powerful engagements our facilitators have initiated, the cultural animation approach maintained an atmosphere where community agreements are protected, co-creation is encouraged, and actually it becomes automatic as the workshop progresses. And the self-other dynamics is not a violation, that it's okay to be I, to express my dignity and to respect someone else's. This means they get to decide the rules, the meaning of their experiences, and what they do out of that experience. So some of when the self is aware of this power, it is easier for it to co-create with others. Some of the salient points lifted from that workshop that's co-created by the participants on gender and identity. Gender and identity are closely tied to the role expectation and performance of that role in the family and community. One participant said, I wish my children would also have the chance to eat what my neighbors are eating. Well, this talks about inclusion as well, who eats what, but it is also about the mother role to her children. Identity was meaningfully painted by the participants as something that comes from the human, from within, from the human person, but resides outside of the same. Hopes and dreams, when you ask, are seldom about makakaon unta ko. It's seldom about me. I hope I can eat. It's almost always, I wish my children can eat. My children, my parents, my neighbors, my community. And the roles are the provider, the hero, the sacrificial lamb. On fragility and social context, fragility means your inability or your limitation to protect your family, your community, land, and nature, or in their term, in Bisaya is kinaiyahan, which is, by the way, as we said in the first part, it's your identity and your right, because it's your role to protect these things. And fragility, that inability comes from weak contracts or non-existent contracts. One participant said, my children might get laughed at because they are not educated. A mother trying to protect her children, what does she do? Encourage them to take a scholarship test, right? One time, second time, and third time, failed. How else can a mother protect her children? Play the role effectively, as a protector. That's her identity. If the program itself has never been designed responsive of their need, because circumstances never prepare them to pass that test to begin with, an exam that already had them excluded even before they get the chance of being included. What do they need to protect? Their family, their community, their lands, the nature, from pangayaw or tribal war, from illegal loggers, from mining, from conflict, from poor employability, from hunger. Non-existent, weak, and non-responsive policies pushes the agile human spirit to normalize fragility and vulnerability. And lastly, on rights and agency, for them, rights is about protecting, as I've mentioned earlier, one's land, family, and community. And agency is the capacity to think and to act about protecting their family, their land, their community. So next slide, Trish. Learning, these are just some of the salient points that we lifted from that workshop. But learning how to engage is a long process. It's a process. It does not end with the online course. Rather, it flows even after the workshop. Bernalyn, our co-facilitator, also mentioned in one of our post-workshop session, up until now, it's already 5 days after the workshop, I still can't move on. I feel like I forgot myself, or I have lost myself and my identity, my values. I lost that in the process of having family responsibilities and my work. But because of this workshop, I feel like I am brought back to my core, my values, my identity. So there is so much to know and to learn from other people, from others in general. So in the end, it pays to acknowledge the human person, to give her speaking space, to listen to her, right? Because in the end, apparently you and me, just like Jon Snow, we know nothing. Good afternoon, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lara, Joel, Anjali, and Raj. So far, we have examined the manifestations of the moral capability of indigenous and non-indigenous and Muslim women in select areas in Mindanao. Moral capability is the extent to which people are aware of being holders of rights and can mobilize such rights for their social and economic development and well-being. Also, we have had a preview of the toolkit anchored on the cultural animation workshop, key informant interviews, and a survey. For the second part of the workshop, we are fortunate to have with us leading gender and development experts and advocates to share their feedback on the MCAT. Jean Frances Ilio is a gender specialist at the UP, University of the Philippines Public Administration Research and Extension Services Foundation, UPAP Respond, and a longtime gender equality advisor of the Canadian Embassy in Manila. An economist and a women's studies scholar, she was the director of the Women's and Gender Studies program of the Ateneo Institute of Philippine Culture. She is a former president of the Women's Studies Association of the Philippines, a member of the editorial board of the Feminist Economics, and an international corresponding editor of Australian Feminist Studies. Jean has developed gender analysis tools and other gender and development or GAD tools. Chief among them is the Harmonized Gender and Development Guidelines, or HAGADAGA, that has been used by the Philippine government and its development partners since 2004. She's currently testing the Gender and Social Inclusion Impact Assessment that she developed as part of the Regulatory Impact Assessment Manual of the Anti-Red Tape Authority. Jean, please take the Zoom screen.
May I share screen now? Uh-oh. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, Jean.
Okay. So let me see. So I share screen. Okay. Now I was asked, okay, put it on. Okay, I was asked by Bopip to provide some kind of context to the MCAT by mapping the different gender and development tools that have been developed or have been in use in the Philippines. So, but first, because MCAT works with communities, so let me say, okay, communities, who work with communities? Okay, first of all, community is diverse with respect to gender, class, poverty, ethnicity, or religion. But oftentimes, this diversity is lost to outsiders who work with the communities, whether it be national, local government, private sector or business, civil society organizations, and other development organizations who look at communities as though it is a homogeneous group. By community, it could be an indigenous community or lowland community or whatever. But the assumption of a group as homogeneous seems to persist. And it affects programs or projects, even community organizing by the various groups. So now, what would be in the context of existing gender development tools or GAD tools developed or in use in the Philippines? or the question probably is, what had been the broad goals, broad purposes of developing these tools? One is as part of gender mainstreaming efforts of the government, both national and local, as part of ensuring the development efforts support the twin goals of gender equality and women's empowerment of the government. And the third is as an integral part of community development or organizing work. So these are the context of within which group tools have been developed. Now, so there are GAD tools that are directed to organizations, whether government or private, that seek to build the enabling environment for gender equality and women's empowerment, tools that programs or project designers and planners could use, and tools that are used with communities by community organizers and projects using participatory approaches to engage the communities. Now, what are some of the organization-focused tools? Okay, so we have the most used organization-focused tool are two. One is the Gender Mainstreaming Evaluation Framework, or GMEF, and the other is the Gender Responsive LGU Assessment Tool. Both were developed by PCW. Now, GMEF helps measure the extent of gender mainstreaming efforts of an agency or LGU. And it provides some kind of a roadmap as to how an organization can progress in their gender mainstreaming journey. Now, the GIRL, or Gender Responsive LGU Assessment Tool, contains a set of relevant indicators to measure various aspects of gender-responsive local governance and measures the extent to which an LGU provides quality basic service and facilities for its female and male residents, especially from the marginalized sectors, facilities and services that are gender-sensitive, accessible, affordable, timely, and reliable. Now, none of these two actually go to the community level. So they are really focused on organization and making the organization, improving the, as I said, the environment within which programs or projects could be developed. Now, the other, another organization-focused tool was recently developed by the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia, or ISAIA, and it is called Benchmarks for Transformational Partnerships, or BPT. What is it? The benchmarks serve as aspirational standards on how enterprises and other stakeholders in agricultural value chains, or AVCs, could sustainably impact lives of small-scale producers, especially women, their households, and their communities. They are collectively a pathway to sustainability for these enterprises who aspire to make a meaningful contribution to the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Now, the most used gender and development tool for programs and projects is the Harmonized Gender and Development Guidelines for Project Development, Implementation, Monitoring, and Evaluation, or HGDG, or Hagadaga. Now, when I first developed it, first developed it with the National Economic and Development Authority, the Philippine Council of Philippine Commission on Women, what was then known as the National Commission on the Role of Filipino Women, and the Official Development Assistance Gender and Development Network, or ODAGAD network. The guidelines were prepared to help in the designing, monitoring, and evaluating programs and projects so that they could help result in gender equality, so they could achieve gender equality and women's empowerment results. So to date, there are 20 checklists and corresponding guide questions. Each design checklist includes participation of potential beneficiaries as a key element, but the program, better the participation is left to the program or project partners. However, the much of the use of the HCDG now is not so much in designing projects, but in connection with gender budget attribution, or GAD budget attribution, which is actually a way of determining how much gender, what is the effect of gender mainstreaming in the flagship program of flagship programs of government agencies, or LGUs, because the degree by which gender mainstreaming has been successful is supposed to be reflected in the GAD score using the HGDG checklist, which will determine how much of the annual budget of the flagship program could be attributed or linked to the GAD budget. Now, other tools are used for analyzing gender issues that need to be addressed. And examples of gender analysis tools for projects is one, I am committing bibliographic nepotism. I cite my work. So there are two examples of gender analysis tools that can be found in two publications. One is in Gender in Projects and Organizations, that was produced by the Institute of Philippine Culture at Ateneo de Manila University after a peer training in GAD tools, which IPC was asked by the NCRFW, or now PCW, to run in the mid-1990s. So it provides several tools that can be used not just to identify gender issues, say gender gaps in access to and control of resources, that can inform project design, but it can also be used to check on whether the project as implemented have addressed the issues, in this case, gender gaps in access and control of resources and benefits. So it's in effect, what we call the IPC tools expand the Harvard model and the Moser framework to be used also in monitoring and evaluation of projects. Another, which is much closer to MCAT, is the participatory rural appraisal and gender analysis, or PRAGEN. Okay, this was developed in the 1990s by Christy Catalom and Luz Lopez Rodriguez to be used in a Canadian local governance project called the Local Governance Government Support Project, LGSP. That's the first one. So it Pragen seeks to improve the practice on the practice of integrating social dimensions, which is gender, livelihood, stratification, social class, and sociocultural values, to promote responsible environmental governance in community resource-based management, or CBRM. It challenges the ever-pervasive assumption of community homogeneity in PRA. It consists of 13 tools, including household tool 10, which is household access to resources in terms of control, responsibility, and labor. Then there is tool 12, which rank the different options that the community has identified. And then what I like about it is that there is a result. At the end of all this, the community actually prepares what it calls the Gender Resource Management Plan. So it's not just the resource management plan of the community, but gender resource management plan. So my question actually for MCAT is, after this, so what? Now, so far as tools used with communities, all exclusively, one example is the Gender Gap Audit, or GGA, Toolkit for Social Investigation. Again, this is much closer to MCAT, which was developed by a project team headed by the late Gigi Francisco, together with collaborators from CSOs and a community theater group, Kaliwat. Okay, it explores 3 concepts: gender differences and gaps among the poor, using conversations, observation, key informant interviews, and focus group discussions. It explores gender socialization in the community, and also the notion of community as a care system. Now, to provide context to the community organizing work that will be done, the social investigation, GGA Toolkit for Social Investigation, guides community organizers to look at the community system, political institutions at work, and the community care system, using review of documents, interviews with government agencies, and a lot of other things. So a lot of data collection strategies are used before to inform community organizing in a particular community. Now, what's the end product if you use the GGA? It's actually could be used. Community organizing can be open-ended and can result, it could be community organizing around issues that communities, women in particular, had identified as important and that need to be addressed. Or it could also result in a community plan where the community will say, yeah, okay, these are the issues. Yeah, we need to tackle this. What of the actions that need to be taken can be done by us? And how much of it can be done by seeking help from institutions, probably from local government units, specific local offices of national government agencies like the health department, etc., etc. So now the other is through community theater, through community theater and arts, as chosen by the Philippine Educational Theater Association, or PETA. In 2013, it launched its Lingap Sining program, or Nurturing Through the Arts program, which is a culturally grounded participatory program in Leyte province in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan or Typhoon Yolanda, that creatively harnessed the arts in interventions ranging from emergency relief and psychosocial debriefings to disaster preparedness training and the building of more resilient DRR-ready communities. Now, PETA also, when it first started, was running a lot of skits or stage or plays that have been co-developed with communities that highlight issues. Even then, in the 70s and the 80s, highlight issues of domestic violence, fragility, and so on and so forth. So these were the plays would actually be open-ended. So at the end of the play, the women, girls or whatever, and the man would reflect on what could be the ending. As we say in Tagalog, parang bitin, because there is no resolution to, because there's a resolution will come out during the discussion. So, but other the Lingap Sining program, they have lots of games, simulations, etc. And so the process looks similar to that of MCAT. Insofar as the cultural dimension thing is concerned. Now, on my commentary on existing tools, among the various tools used to engage women and men in communities are participatory rural appraisal tools. In the 1990s, PRA was used most extensively in environment projects or by CSOs, NGOs, facilitating community planning to arrest environmental degradation and the problems they bring. The exercises involve transect walks, resource mapping using objects that can be found in the community. A few projects NGOs have integrated gender questions, resulting in gender resource maps, such as that generated using Progen or Ecogen. Now, community organizers who facilitate community planning exercises also use tools that could also be rooted on the PRA. So the MCAT team's comments on engagement as a tick-back exercise is valid. In the case of the HCDG, where participation is required participation of likely beneficiaries is required, and getting their inputs to the design of particular projects is an attempt actually by it's actually an attempt by NEDA, PCW, the ODAGAD network to force, to encourage agencies and projects to involve communities. Now, what method the project or the agency would choose or the group would choose will depend on what they think will work for them and their communities, particularly so far soliciting inputs from women and men stakeholders, and in the conduct of gender analysis. What are the prospects for MCAT? I think it enhances PRA and participatory approaches. A la Peta's Sling of Sinning, but under different fragile contexts. So it's not just in areas under armed conflicts that it can be used, but probably also in areas of where you have environmental degradation and natural disasters like typhoons, etc. I also see it, MCAT, as a way of enhancing the HUDG checklist for women in areas under armed conflict and the agency of women and men in fragile contexts. So I will be discussing the matter with the ODAGAD network, NEDA and PCW, and say, can we take another look at the GAD checklist for women in areas under armed conflict, and how we can incorporate the key messages and the key learnings from the MCAT project. Now, it could also be used in relief efforts of development partners. But the challenge here is getting ODA agencies and their local partners in the act, on board. The challenges, I see the challenges as one is it seems that it is creative and immature dependent. And so it is a question of developing committed co-learners, because you can always fall into the usual bad habit of just asking them without sometimes understanding the context and without any respect and acknowledgement of their being actually your teacher, rather than somebody that you be teaching to. Now, it also requires not just different skill sets to do MCAT, but more importantly, is the willingness to, I quote, design engagement activities with women, rather than designing activities with women, but using the usual engagement approaches. Okay, that ends my commentary. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. All right. Thank you, Jean, for helping us map the universe of GAD tools in use in the Philippines, assessing the toolkit, and offering to introduce it to a wider group of users in the Philippines. Indeed, what's next, as Jean has asked, and also as Mary Racelis has asked. Thanks, Mary, for joining us this afternoon. The tool, MCAT, is just a tool to ensure that we will be getting it right, that we are not missing anything. In the presentation, we already saw some surprises in the data, manifestations of normalization and internalization of gender inequality is expected. We saw how women's, the other orientation of women, but we also saw a surprise in the data where we asked, is it genuine empowerment and resilience, or is that resilience, which we usually understand in a positive sense, could actually be a form of normalization of gender inequality or of domestic conflict. So it is still up to the group, it is still up to the project using the tool to find the solutions. Structural, as we know, we also missed in providing structural solutions when we are missing the embeddedness of gender inequality, which as shown in the study, are not addressed by structural interventions. But we will now have some answers to this question, what next, from our next two speakers. But first, time check. We would be here until 6:30 p.m. So we'll extend a bit. We are inviting you to stay until then. So let me introduce our next speaker. Khalil Apuzen Ito is a soil scientist and project director with the Foundation for Agrarian Reform Cooperatives in Mindanao, or Farm Co-op, a non-governmental organization that serves over 6,000 community-based and indigenous family farmers in Mindanao. Khalil creates and implements programs on the ground that focus on holistic community development and sustainable agri-ecological farming initiatives. She works collaboratively with indigenous and family farmers, farm workers, technical staff, educators, health practitioners, women, and community organizers. She and her team also engage community and tribal elders to revive and understand cultural traditions and indigenous knowledge and practices on health, agriculture, and water management. Khalil, please go ahead.
Thank you, Bopit. Thank you all for organizing this event and also for the honor of joining you. I also would like to thank Alicia Shivi for connecting me to the Moral Capacity Assessment Tool project and your team. So I lead the Sustainability and Resilience Program under Farm Co-op, and I was asked to talk first about reflections on our work in particular, and the issues faced by small farmers and how the MCAT can be useful in this context. So I just want to share a little bit about the work that we do. The Sustainability and Resilience Program is a laboratory program that we started in 2014, and the program aims to promote a genuine strengthening of small family farming sustainability and resilience. And we work mostly in Mindanao, but we also reach out to the international community for support. And throughout our program, gender equity and women empowerment are cross-sectional themes. And this means that as much as possible, we facilitate the brainstorming of project ideas, and we ensure that women are involved in the process from the beginning and throughout the project life cycle. So women farmers and community members are also there in the monitoring evaluation of the project. So over the years, my team and I have, oops, can anyone hear me? I'm not sure.
Yes, Khalil.
Okay. So over the years, my team and I have co-facilitated and co-developed projects and activities and on different areas, food sovereignty, health, and sustainable agriculture, as Bopip has mentioned. And in addition to that work, I also the international coordinator for International Alliance for Sustainability of Family Farmers, where I co-facilitate collaborative work with small family farmers, labor unions, and civil society organizations from Ecuador, Peru, UK, and Germany. So overall, when we've looked at the different contexts of small family farmers in different areas, there is a common theme of facing threats to their livelihood, threats to their security of their land. And they have difficulty accessing the right to market niches and finding support to develop and improve their farms and the quality and value of their products. The development of their farms are further constrained by poor infrastructure, like poor roads, irrigation, or no irrigation system at all. And as many of you probably know, many of the farming communities have poor access to healthcare. And many of the institutional interventions that I found towards small farmers are often top-down in approach. And in Mindanao, the challenges of small family farmers are further exacerbated by armed conflict or peace and conflict tension, especially in many remote indigenous areas, and which I've been exposed to the impact of these conflicts on the lives of women in the Ateneo community in the past, and now in my work with the Tagabawa Bagoba women in the community. So when I started working with the Tagabawa Bagoba women in co-producing projects, we were aware of the community's experience with a long history of armed conflict between communist rebels and the military. And this conflict has displaced the community, and they have had a chance only to come back to their farms in the 1990s. So since their farming community had to flee their farms because of the conflict, they had difficulty trusting that they are secure in their land and in their own farm. And some subconsciously don't invest as much into farming as they previously did out of fear that they might have to move again. For the situations of women, when we started, domestic violence was quite high, particularly the violence against women and children. And over time, the longer we worked with them, stories of trauma and fear of the armed conflict would often resurface. And so when I worked with the women in the community, we were asked to support them. And so we were lucky enough to find a funder that would allow us to work more on process. And so we worked on co-creating pilot projects with the community, and the program organically developed, and we designed the program to accommodate the community healing that needs to happen, as well as the need to create a safe space, especially for the women and the youth. And then we first started with a community visioning process where tribal elders, women, and male farmers, youth, and community educators, as well as spiritual leaders and barangay leaders were able to come together, bring their individual vision, and then we collected it into and put it together in the community vision. But as we started creating the co-producing the projects, we found some constraints in their ability to really be engaged with us. And so we started identifying some of these constraints and bring in more training tools into the process. And we also, and some of these tools are on communication, also empowerment tools that are connected or are pretty much embedded in it are artistic modalities. And so we also gave a lot of time for coaching the women and also providing space for just being able to talk about the issues they face, the multiple burdens, balancing motherhood and self-care, their ability to figure out their voice and their position in the community and their identity. So over time, these skills that the women gained helped build their capacity to be more fully engaged in co-producing and co-designing the projects with us. And it's evolved, the quality of the projects have evolved. And we are at the point where the women are now saying, hey, this is what I want to do. And I know then it needs to be this and that and this and that. And so we're now able to just just give them a lot of support and just be present and then figure out with them the parameters that they want to work with. And this is also happening with the participatory action research we're doing. Indigenous farmers and Indigenous women farmers are telling us what they would like to do for research. Even though we have a common issue that we need to tackle, they provide us, they basically let us know what they want to explore. And again, we work on the parameters, the language, how we're going to monitor and assess it together. But having said all this, and having had the time to look at the moral capacity assessment tool, I find that it is handy. It can be useful to help deepen the discussion or help build awareness on topics that need to be further explored. And from what I've seen of the MCAT, it can facilitate more meaningful engagement in our farming communities, and it can be used in different settings with women-only spaces or a mix of men and women. I like, it's really great that it's also brings in the movement and games component in there, which helps build rapport between the facilitators and helps build the relationship. I think it's not enough to just sit down and talk or just draw, which we've done a lot of. It's really great to have people moving and then feel their space and how they negotiate space with each other. And the other thing that I've found is that, so the initiating the facilitation exercises help to clearly build awareness and empathy, and it can be more effective in demonstrating to the group how in many cases women are invisible or not acknowledged. And one of the exercises also on discussing social and power dynamics, and was simple yet very effective in deconstructing the win-lose ethos and those and how marginalization occurs. And these two areas, experiencing invisibility and experiencing and being marginalization of women and even communities, are very difficult to convey without sounding preachy to people. So I was very pleased that the MCAT had come up with ways to facilitate this interaction and have the participants themselves come to their own realization of the moral issues in these dynamics. And I thought that was brilliantly done. I think those are really difficult to bring forward, and and it was able to do it in such a very, not too many props. However, I do agree with the previous presenter that the facilitator really needs to have some maturity to know context and also know how to gauge. And so it helps to have those guiding questions that followed the video trainings. And so also, I feel that empowerment becomes sustainable when we are able to break these unhealthy social and power dynamics. And even though we have women who have gained their voice, their agency, their strength, it might also help for them to go through the MCAT exercise to continue raising their awareness and empathy for others who need support. It's just an idea, because I think that's one of the things that we want to continue, that women, as they become empowered, they also need to empower other women in this cycle to make it sustainable. So my understanding is that the tool is still evolving and it's receptive to feedback, which makes it more adaptive. And I feel like that's that kind of dialogue between facilitators and the tool will hopefully make it be more relevant to the context that we're working with. So that's my input. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalil. I see in Khalil's work the three cultures, the crossover collaboration of among the natural sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities. So thanks for pointing out that there are gaps in the process of engaging our partners to surface out issues, ideas of women amidst their invisibility and marginalization. And this is a gap that the MCAT can address, can fill up, but also that MCAT in itself can be a tool for women themselves to participate and be empowered by just participating in the MCAT. So thank you in the MCAT workshop. So thank you, Khalil, for your assessment of the tool. We will move to our next speaker, Associate Professor Rosaline Romo Etchem. Rose is an associate professor at the College of Liberal Arts at Western Mindanao State University in Zamboanga City. She is an advocate and trainer for women's human rights and issues, gender and development, adolescent sexuality, reproductive health, parent education on adolescent sexuality, GAD plan and budgeting, and gender analysis. She is a certified member of the National Gender Resource Pool of the Philippine Commission on Women and is a member of the board of the Women and Gender Studies Association of the Philippines. Please go ahead, Rose.
Yes, thank you so much, Doc Bopi. And buenas tardes a todos. Magandang hapon. And thank you and for this privilege that I can share my experiences and how this tool can be useful in my advocacy. All right, teaching was both my first and last career, and it is where I most likely retire. My life as a woman, on the other hand, has taken me down path I never imagined. I work as a technical associate for Western Mindanao State University's Women Research and Resource Center under Dr. Dorly Fernandez until 2010. And I took over as the director and changed that name women into gender to be more inclusive. As the former chair of the GRRC, I was responsible for enforcing all GAD legislations at the university and in the community, as well as developing GAD-related projects, programs, and activities. The center's key ideals are women's empowerment, equality, and justice. And as the chair of that office, we serve national government agencies, NGOs, academia, CSOs, and LGUs through capacity building, planning and budgeting, research, and policy on gender and development. We train them how to utilize their 5% GAD budget. And I think this is the power of the center. And I also certain that the Young Women Leadership Program, Adolescent Reproductive Health Program, and humanitarian services are well established at the university. In 2013, Zamboanga siege, an armed conflict between the government and the MNLF that displaced 100,000 people more and disrupted their lives for over a year, paved the way for NGOs and academia to collaborate to help our internally displaced persons. From basic services to gender-based violence assistance and referrals, to the creation of friendly and safe spaces for women and girls, I became more involved in the community after the armed conflict. Working with women, young people, and persons with diverse sojourn, particularly on issues of empowerment and gender-based violence, is challenging and exhausting, but rewarding, especially when the victim survivors able to gently reclaim their life with dignity and pride. Participating in non-government organizations such as Zabida and Kalisaan allows me to experiment with various intervention techniques to meet the needs of women and youth as our beneficiaries as they arise. I was exposed to art and play as a form of treatment for children during the Zamboanga Armed Battle in 2013, but not for adult women. I'm only familiar with psychological first aid and debriefing to assist victim survivors during human and natural disasters, as well as therapy for gender-based situations. However, as a certified GAD National Resource Pool of the Philippine Commission on Women, I use a different strategy to elicit from participants how they collectively envisions their community or agency being gender sensitive and responsive. We usually conduct this at the end of our training to culminate that and to summarize and put that into an action through a collage or through a drawing. And at the same time, I usually ask them also to do some art presentation how to have a vow to community. So using the MCAT tool through cultural animation as a technique to inspire co-creation and co-ownership in order to build the future inspires me to incorporate it into my God training. I'm hoping that this tool will make my God activities more interesting, playful, and engaging. And I think this can also encourage this kind of technique for those who are shy and doesn't like to participate. So they can just work within their group and present this, whatever that they have as their vision about their future, for whatever activities or objective for that day. And I'm not sure if I can learn magic, which is one of the tools that you can also use in cultural animation, but definitely I can do plays. I'm looking forward to utilizing this tool with various types of participants because Region 9 it's varied and diverse in terms of ethnicity, and I'm sure because you have already tested this with different ethnic group, I assume that this is also culturally sensitive. So this is a form of innovation, I would say. And I'm willing to use this and try this in my activities. So I'm just excited actually as I went through and listening during the presentation. As a researcher, I can more likely also use this to gather more information on the ground on how women, victim survivors of gender-based violence survived and their lives after that. So I'm looking forward to use this, and as what I have already shared in the small group, that whenever I'm going to utilize this, I will give feedback, maybe for enhancement and maybe for more better and best way of using the tools for different sectors of our society. So congratulations and good luck to the team, and I'm happy to support you. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you for pointing out the ability of the MCAT to incorporate local and cultural context, especially through the cultural animation workshop. As we all know, context matters, and that's very important, so that we will all understand why certain ideas, why certain thoughts are being surfaced out. So we have to understand the context. So thank you, Jean, Khalil, and Rose. Again, I invite everyone to stay with us in the next 15 or 20 minutes. If you please stay. We will now open the floor for questions and feedback. We will be reading of questions and feedback posted in the chat box. So we have already talked about what is next. Now the question about what is next after we have taken the ideas from our participants, surface them out. But what is next for the project and the toolkit, especially that this pandemic is evolving into itself as a fragile context?
Yes, Popip, I think I can take that question if you want to.
Yes, Lara, please.
Yeah, so first of all, our immediate next step will be that we are going to test the toolkit in Pakistan, Peshawar specifically, which is again a fragile context, a conflict-affected zone. And what we want to do is try to see if the learnings from what we have done in the Philippines and Mindanao can be applied somehow in Pakistan. And this is just the next step in the short term, and what we are going to do is trying to include all the feedbacks that we are collecting and improving the MCAT and our community partner in Mindanao, and Raj can say something more about that, is planning to try and test the toolkit again with different groups of people in the community. So basically the idea is let's start to use it. Let's encourage organizations to use the toolkit and to improve it in the next months and years to come.
All right, thank you, Lara. That comment about the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic itself,
yes.
becoming.
I can add on that also because it was one of the findings actually from the interviews that we conducted. The pandemic is just another layer of fragility in contexts that are already massively affected by violence, conflict, but also natural disasters. So it looked like from the interviewees that the pandemic, yes, had an impact, but it's not such a massive impact as it could have been in other non-conflict affected societies. So it's interesting, again, it's another finding from our project, and it's interesting to see how it's just, the pandemic is just a piece of the puzzle, which probably, of course, exacerbate the vulnerability of women. But it's just one piece of the puzzle, and it's a very complex puzzle made of different layers of fragility.
Thank you, Lara. So that comment about the pandemic, the current pandemic, having the potential of becoming a fragile context is from Dr. Praxis Miranda. Right, so we have a question from our students in the Master in Social and Transdisciplinary Development in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, from Nga Nguyen Hong of Vietnam. I'm just wondering about the questionnaire, the distribution. Can they fully internalize and understand? Okay, so this is the methodology questions, and related to that, is it are they able to from Shaw, Sato, how do you think it's possible? How do you interview indigenous people and take out their honest voices? So questions about reliability and validity of our data.
Yeah, can I ask Raj to, Raj, of course, led our field research, so I would like for him to step in here if possible.
Yeah, thank you, Lara. For the questionnaires, we initially translated it to Maranao and Natamanobo, and from that time we realized that context translation really it has limitations. There are words that cannot be fully captured, and there are questions that cannot be worded in a way that that cannot be worded exactly in the local dialect, and we understood that. We had the translation ready, but during the actual delivery of these questionnaires, we made sure that these are guided. So that means that the enumerator was really there with the application, inputting the response of each participant per question. On top of that, we also made sure that our enumerators are shadowed by locals. I mentioned earlier in my presentation, we had Bernalyn, who is Atamanobo, can speak the language, lives in the area, knows practically, from the community. And we also have the community liaison who can speak the language. And so those are two layers that we made sure are present when we conducted the surveys. Thank you.
All right, correct. Let me just acknowledge that question about internalizing or understanding the study is from Jamila Shasangila, and yes, Joel?
Yeah, if I could add, I think some of the questions also pertain to the sensitivity of asking the questions or the way they're being asked. Among the strategies that we've used is to tap partners who are from the community themselves. So it's just I think Lara mentioned earlier that there's a cast of many in this project. We're only one of a few of them who are engaged, and at the level of field work, we our presence is there through ROJ, at least in Davao and also in Marawi, but there are always partners on the ground who are from the community and had been living there. And among us, we had established connections with the members of this community through the years of doing research and also other forms of engagement in the areas that we have chosen as sites. In Zamboanga, actually, our enumerators are mainly coming from the community. The people who ask the questions, who administer the questionnaires, were displaced people themselves, and among them, they had recruited or engaged with the elders, the local leaders, the traditional gatekeepers on the ground to help facilitate the engagement. And along with that, the language is being translated, not just from English to the local language, but also the idiom, the way that they understand them are also delivered in such a way because they're from the community. So in a sense, we were actually mindful of the sensitivity of the engagement, and we thought that there's no any other way to do it but to engage people who may have lived in the community, and among them were also in the midst of the conflict, and those who have been working in conflict zones for a period of time that help us in the data gathering process and to ensure respect and sensitivity is actually established.
All right, thank you, Joel. Okay, let me just read a comment from Khalil. Or Khalil, would you like to say a bit more about the tool?
Sure. My apologies. I actually quite forgot to mention that in terms of supporting the voice and agency of women, I feel that we could use the MCAT to deepen awareness and the quality of participatory decision-making in the co-production of knowledge and the processes in the community. And this was mentioned earlier as well by one of the participants. So I think it can be, it's a good tool to have to complement other tools we're using in the participatory approach in different areas of our projects. But I think it's quite useful with deepening conversations. So I appreciate and I'm very grateful that you've done this work, and more power to the work that you're doing as you move forward.
Thank you, Khalil. We have one question here that I really want to share with the research team, and we could spend some time with this. There's this interest about how the moral capability assessment is designed. Like, how do you operationalize that concept? We've seen that in the survey questionnaire. Can we have some illumination on how we did that unpacking of the concept of moral capability, of empowerment, or of gender inequality in both the cultural animation interviews and also in the survey?
So I can start and give an overview very briefly, and then I'll leave it to Anjali to explain better what she has done on the questionnaire. But the idea of having an international team of a mix of academics and practitioners, actually, I think it worked very well, because what we have done is we started with very general concepts of gender equality and feminist studies that are through and shared across the globe, really on sustainable peace and some of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and how theories that are political science theories and human rights-based theories interface with gender equality and conflict aspects and conflict fragility. So we really started from an international point of view. So the UK team worked on the theoretical basis for then working on the practicalities of the toolkit. So that's why, that's how we came up with the three main categories of identity, gender identity, context sensitivity, and then rights and agency. And then of course the Filipino team jumped in, and the practitioners as well helped us to actualize and make more concrete outcomes out of the theoretical framework that we developed. And maybe Anjali can say something more into details in terms of the questionnaires.
Thank you, Laura. Yes, I mean, this notion of moral capability is quite new. So obviously there is no questionnaire which assesses moral capability. So part of our task in this project was to develop a questionnaire that would assess moral capability. And as Lara talked about the theoretical framework, we had this kind of in the background. So what we did was to do a very comprehensive literature review of similar concepts out there, things like agency, identity, dignity, self-efficacy, and the like. And to look at what tools were out there in terms of assessing these various concepts and how those various components fit into the concept of moral capability. So this is very much a pilot questionnaire. The moral capability section of the questionnaire included 29 items. And that covered all aspects of agency, dignity, identity, self-determination, and self-efficacy. Now, what our task is going forward is to kind of, firstly, reduce the number of items, but also try to see what are the kind of major factors or major components, psychometrically speaking, that make up this notion of moral capability. And as Laura said earlier, I mean, we hope to refine this questionnaire or this measure, and then also test it in a different context, like in Pakistan, for example. So we will kind of go through several iterations of refining the tool in future. And I do believe that it is a tool that will kind of go through this development of testing, piloting, item refinement, several times over before we actually arrive at a checklist that is very robust and can be used widely across different contexts and different countries as well.
All right, thank you, Anjali.
Sorry, Bobby, I just wanted to say something about moral capabilities, because probably, I should have said something more during my presentation. I now give for granted that people knows what moral capability is actually, and moral capability is a super fancy way to tell what people, the people's awareness, in this case, women's awareness of being holders of rights. And moral capability is a concept that I developed with another member of the team, Professor Rob Caruana. It's in a paper that is not yet published, so it's under publication. So it's a super new concept very much in evolution, and it's based on the capability approach of Amartya Sen and Nussbaum, and it crossover feminist theory and gender equality theory. So just for saying that moral capability per se is not an established theoretical concept, but we are developing the concept also thanks to this project, of course.
All right, thank you, Lara, for making sure that we don't go home to have dinner and not knowing what moral capability in MCAT. All right, the time that we have been given to be together has run out. Thank you for your comments and questions. May I now call on Dr. Gail Ilagan for the closing remarks. Gail is the chairperson of the Department of Psychology at the Ateneo de Davao University, where she earned her PhD in clinical psychology. She is the executive director of the Mindanao-based Association of Psychologists and Helping Practitioners Incorporated, our partner in the MCAT project. She is an associate member of the National Research Council of the Philippines, a former board member of the Psychological Association of the Philippines, and an international affiliate of the International Psychological Society. Gail?
Maayong gabi. Can you hear me?
Yes, Gail. Maayong gabi.
Yeah. So, darkness has fallen. The day has ended. Thank you, Doc Bupip, and the rest of the MCAT team for allowing me the last word on this occasion. And I especially thank you for considering us to collaborate on this, on piloting on this research endeavor here in Mindanao. At the time that the invitation arrived, we were literally climbing walls already, because that would have been a year into the COVID lockdown. We were not ready for that. As some of you know, we do a lot of work on the ground. And we were especially attracted to this because it selected communities where we have worked before and we desperately wanted to get back to, especially Marawi, where we felt that we had a lot of unfinished business in support of the survivors of the Marawi siege. And so, as psychologists also, we are interested in test development. So all told, this was a very welcome opportunity for us to get back in the saddle, so to speak, to go out there in these communities to figure out what LGUs would require in order for us to be able to enter and do in-person data gathering and in-person engagements. Makataba ng puso, it had been a delight to get to these places where ordinarily you defined it as fragile communities. Yes, and another thing perhaps that defines these communities would be the fact that not very many people are interested to understand the context and really see it on the ground. So this was a very welcome opportunity for us, and I'd like to thank MCAT for this opportunity. More importantly, not only for this opportunity, but the fact that this has also given us the chance to train our students. Many of them are here, many of them became part of the deployments in the data gathering and the community engagement process, and also in responding to some of the needs that were surfaced during the activities for MCAT. Some of them are here also, especially delighted that they have been part of the training, the online training. And this is something that they will bring with them when they work out there in the community. So I guess it goes without saying that we find the MCAT and the tools that we piloted, so to speak, very, very appropriate in establishing rapport and in getting to the heart of the experience of women, how they live their lives and how they realize what are their rights, what they can demand, and what they can accept as what they consider to be their lot, so to speak. So it had been, for me especially, very fulfilling to be talking to these women, to have them open up and share their stories. And I will always treasure this, as do the rest of us at APHP. Beyond the MCAT experience, the MCAT project, I'm sure that in the future, we will still be working in these communities with a clearer understanding of how women experience their world, what they aspire for, and what they need. And so in as much as we can, we take what we can do to respond to some of these needs. And for others, we also help and assist the community to access from those who are supposed to be responsible for delivering on the requirements of this community. So thank you, everyone. Good night. Good morning, wherever you are. And I hope that you keep safe from the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as from the floods and the diseases it might bring. And if the world is burning where you are, I hope you too will keep safe. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Gail. With the research team, I thank Jean, Khalil, and Rose for sharing their insights today. And our thanks to Ms. Isa Mijares and Ms. Trish Reyes, who have been supporting us in more ways than one. To all, thank you for joining us tonight. Have a nice evening.